The shelter worker finally came to her senses and opened the door fully. With a nod from General Jackson, she stepped aside, letting the two of them in. The soaked and silent man who had once commanded respect, and the woman who would let no one forget why. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, humming softly. The air was warmer, but it didn't chase away the cold that had seeped into Elijah's bones. He sat slowly on a worn-out plastic chair near the reception window. His bag, now repacked with the recovered letters, rested on his lap. General Jackson didn't leave his side. The shelter manager, a middle-aged woman named Carla, brought him a towel and a mug of something hot. "I'm sorry," she said softly, kneeling beside him. "I didn't know." Elijah gave her a faint smile. "That's all right. Most people don't." The shelter's common room was quiet, but eyes watched from corners and over cups of soup. People were listening now. People who, moments earlier, had laughed or ignored or turned away. Carla gestured to the bag on his lap. "What are all those for?" Elijah looked down at it for a long moment. Then he opened the flap and pulled out the letter with no stamp. Its envelope was soft with age, but the name written on the front was still clear. "To Corporal James Mendez. If found, please deliver." He handed it to Carla. She hesitated, then opened it with care. Inside was a single handwritten page, a note scrawled in neat block letters written decades ago. "James, I never got to tell you, but you were the bravest damn man I ever served beside. I saw the way you threw yourself over Ramirez that day. You saved his life, mine too. I should have pulled you back. I should have been faster. If you're reading this, it means someone finally got it to you, or to your family. I hope they know the kind of man you were. Elijah." Carla's hands trembled as she folded the letter. "You wrote this for him?" Elijah shook his head. "I wrote it for his mother, but I could never find her." A quiet hush fell again. Jackson placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, why now? Why come out in this storm after all these years?" He took a sip of the warm drink and said simply, "Because too many of them are gone now, and I'm running out of time." Over the next hour, a few of the shelter's residents gathered around him as he slowly opened the bag and pulled out more letters. One by one, he explained them. One was addressed to the brother of a man who died in a supply convoy in Iraq, a convoy Elijah had led through an ambush. Another was for the father of a Marine who took his place on watch so Elijah could sleep for the first time in 48 hours and never woke up again. He hadn't written these letters in the past week or month. He'd written them over decades. At first, he'd tried to deliver them, visiting houses, knocking on doors, making calls. But people had moved, names had changed. Sometimes families didn't want to hear the truth. Sometimes there was no one left to give them to. So he kept the letters, protected them like sacred relics, because the words inside were all he had left of the men who never made it home. And now, with a frailer body and foggier mind, he wandered town to town, following any lead he could, dropping off what he could, trying to make peace with ghosts by giving their families the truth. "Step off the property, old man. This shelter's for real people, not strays off the street." The voice rang out sharp, cutting through the cold morning air like a whip. Officer Todd Raines, a young white cop with a badge he hadn't earned in sweat or sacrifice, glared down at the elderly black man who stood on the edge of the shelter's walkway. It was raining, not just drizzle, but sheets of icy, wind-driven rain, the kind that seeped into your bones. The old man said nothing. He was soaked to the skin, a tattered military-style coat clinging to his thin frame. He had no umbrella, no suitcase, just a small plastic bag held close to his chest. "What, cat got your tongue?" Officer Raines stepped closer, his boots splashing into a puddle that sprayed the old man's worn shoes. "I said this isn't a loitering zone. You want to stand somewhere? Try the bus station downtown." From the shelter's door, a few people inside peeked through the glass. Some looked away. Some chuckled. One even pulled out a phone, beginning to record. Another officer, young, pale, and silent, leaned on the cruiser with arms crossed, watching. The old man finally raised his head. Rain streamed down his wrinkled face. His voice, when it came, was steady. "I'm not here to loiter. I came to drop off a letter." Officer Raines smirked. "A letter? You think this is the post office?" He yanked the bag from the man's arms. "Let's see what kind of threat you're hiding." He tore the bag open, scattering its contents onto the wet pavement. There was no weapon, no drugs, just envelopes. Dozens of them. Some were crinkled and yellowed with age. Others were neatly sealed, addressed by hand. Names written with care and reverence. A few had faded stamps. Many didn't. One envelope, thick and creased at the corners, caught the wind and tumbled into a puddle. The old man reached out with a gasp, trying to catch it. Officer Raines kicked it further out of reach. "Look at this," he jeered, holding another letter up to the crowd that had begun to form near the shelter entrance. "We got ourselves the last mailman of the Confederacy!" Laughter from strangers, from people huddled inside for warmth, from the shelter worker who hadn't even opened the door. Still, the old man said nothing. He lowered his hand, slowly. He didn't bend to retrieve the letter. He didn't protest when Raines stepped closer again. He just stood there. Not trembling, not defiant, just still. "I'm calling this in," Raines muttered. "You're trespassing, obstructing." But he never got the chance to finish. The shelter door opened. Not with a creak, but with sudden force. And through it stepped a woman, tall, dark-skinned, dressed in a civilian raincoat, soaked from her run across the street. But her bearing, her posture, it wasn't civilian. Her voice rang out like thunder across the stunned courtyard. "Officer, what the hell are you doing?" Officer Raines turned, annoyed. "Ma'am, I'm handling." She stepped closer. "Is that how you handle veterans in this city?" Raines froze. "Veteran?" The woman held up her hand. With deliberate calm, she reached into her coat and pulled out a laminated badge, a Department of Defense seal, and beneath it, "Brigadier General Althea Jackson, United States Army, retired." The silence that followed could have swallowed a tank battalion whole. "I know this man," General Jackson said, walking past the shocked officer. "And if even one letter of his was damaged, you'd better pray to every god you know that I don't press charges." Officer Raines's mouth opened, then closed again. His partner was already retreating to the cruiser. The old man looked up. For the first time, his face changed. Recognition. and something deeper, grief. "Ma'am," he said, voice hoarse. "Lieutenant McKinley, sir," she replied quietly. "2nd Division, 2006, Afghanistan." He blinked. The rain fell harder. "You made it back," he murmured. She nodded, eyes gleaming. "Because of you, sir, we all did." She bent down, gathering the scattered letters with gentle hands. The other bystanders began to stir, the laughter dying like smoke in the wind. One man quietly helped pick up the fallen envelopes. Officer Raines remained frozen. General Jackson rose to her full height. "This man isn't homeless. He isn't crazy. And he isn't some random old man wandering around in the rain." She turned to the crowd, her voice now carrying a command presence that silenced even passing traffic. "This man is Master Sergeant Elijah Thorne, retired, decorated, honored. He carried letters to families who never got their sons back. And now, in his final years, he's trying to deliver what no one else will: closure." There was no applause. There was only silence. The kind of silence that speaks more than noise ever could. Outside, the rain began to let up. But inside, the storm had only just settled. Officer Raines, the young man who had mocked Elijah hours earlier, returned to the shelter. He didn't wear his smug smile now. He looked older than he had that morning, or maybe just smaller. He stepped in, cap in hand, and approached slowly. "Sir," he said, I wanted to apologize." Elijah didn't say anything right away, just looked at him with a gaze that had once assessed enemy lines under artillery fire. Raines cleared his throat. "I didn't know who you were." General Jackson, standing nearby, answered without turning her head. "And that's the damn problem." Elijah finally spoke. "It's not about who I am. It's about what you saw. An old black man in a coat. And that was all you needed to decide." Raines nodded, shame burning bright on his face. "I've got no excuse." "No," Elijah said, "but maybe next time you'll ask a name before you make a judgment." He reached into his bag again and held out a letter. Raines took it, confused. "To the rookie who doesn't know better yet. I hope one day you meet someone who opens your eyes the way war opened mine. Not because I want you to suffer, but because I want you to see. See that people are not what they wear, or how they smell, or whether they sleep indoors. See that service is not always a uniform, and that dignity doesn't vanish when your boots get old." Officer Raines read it in silence. Then, still holding the letter, he saluted. This time, nobody laughed. A week passed. Elijah remained in the shelter, sleeping in a quiet corner cot near the boiler room. No longer ignored, no longer invisible. The staff brought him his meals. Some of the younger residents sat with him in the evenings, asking questions about war, about men they'd never met, about the weight of silence. Officer Raines came by every evening after his shift. He never arrived in uniform. He came in jeans and a hoodie, sometimes with food, sometimes with a notepad. He said less, listened more. And every night before he left, he read another letter from Elijah's bag. One night, he found a letter addressed to someone with his last name. "That's my grandfather," he whispered, voice cracking. "You served with him?" Elijah nodded. Good man, brave man, never once hesitated to run into the fire when someone was down. The young officer sat in stunned silence, clutching the letter like it was a fragile miracle. And it was. Meanwhile, General Jackson had taken action in her own quiet way. She pulled strings, made calls, and contacted every military archive she could get clearance for. Within 3 days, she had what she needed: confirmation of Elijah Thomas's full service record. She printed it, framed it, and brought it back to the shelter personally. On the top was his full name: Master Sergeant Elijah Thomas, United States Army, 1968 to 1999. 3 combat tours, Bronze Star, Silver Star, Distinguished Service Cross. Final assignment, 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. She didn't hand it to him. She simply hung it on the wall above the cot where he slept, right beside the heater. When Elijah saw it, he didn't speak. But later that night, Raines caught him just staring at it for over an hour. Like a man who'd just been handed back a name he thought the world had forgotten. Then came the storm. A real one this time. Heavy rain returned to the city, lashing against windows and flooding gutters, the kind of storm that made you grateful for a roof and walls. That night, Elijah didn't sleep. He sat in the shelter's common room, bag in his lap. General Jackson arrived just after 11 p.m., soaked through. No uniform, just a raincoat and boots. "You shouldn't be out in this, sir," she said. "I have one more letter to deliver," he replied quietly. "You can't walk in that storm." "I won't need to." She raised an eyebrow. He opened the bag, pulled out a thin, sealed envelope. No address, no name, just a small phrase on the front, written in faded pen. "If I never get to finish them all." She read it, confused, then looked at him again. "Elijah, this is for you?" He nodded. "It's my last one." The next morning, the staff found Elijah in his chair, slumped forward gently, his fingers still resting on the bag. Peaceful, still. He was gone. It made the local paper, then regional news, then national. The headline read, "Homeless man found dead in shelter was a decorated war hero." The articles exploded across social media. Military groups shared his service record. Veteran organizations quoted the letters. Even the president mentioned him in a speech about unsung heroes whose courage never made the headlines but made the world safer. The shelter was flooded with letters and donations. A permanent plaque was placed near the front entrance. "In memory of Master Sergeant Elijah Thomas." He carried their names until someone could say them again. The wall beside his cot, once blank and peeling, became a memorial. Veterans and strangers alike sent in their stories, their own letters, their own regrets. But it was what happened at the bus stop that mattered most. That cold bench where he had once collapsed beside his bag, mocked and ignored by a white officer who didn't see a soldier, only a shadow. That bench was replaced with polished oak, and above it, mounted on blackened steel, was a plaque etched with his final words. They laughed at a man with a bag of letters, but they didn't know he was carrying the weight of every name that never made it home. Every Veterans Day, Officer Raines sits at that bench. He wears no uniform. He reads a letter aloud from Elijah's bag, now preserved in a shadow box at the shelter. He doesn't do it for the cameras. He does it because some truths have to be spoken, even if only one person is listening.